Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Coming Distractions, brought to you by the Nerdpocalypse podcast. I'm your host, Jay. I'm here with my friend, Brad.
Hello.
All right, guys, we're back. We are going to discuss Blade Runner 2049. So Blade Runner 2049 is the follow-up 30 years in the making sequel directed by, I'm going to screw this up, Denis Villeneuve?
Villeneuve?
Yeah, let's go with that.
We actually watched the video to try to find out how to
And we
pronounce that
still
correctly.
screwed
We
it
still
up.
can't do it.
Obviously starring Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford. This movie not only takes place 30 years after the original, but actually took like 30 years.
35 years, actually.
Yeah. So the general plot of this film is, again, it picks up in the future in 2049, where Harrison Ford's character is gone off somewhere. No one knows really where he is. And there is this new organization, the Wallace Corporation, that has picked up the Tyrell Corporation's building of replicants. And now there's sort of this new case that has come about. And the Blade Runner on the case is K, played by Ryan Gosling.
Right, and Blade Runners are still around to retire the old model replicants, some of which are still in existence.
Right, and all the Model 9s and beyond are totally fine.
Yeah, so all the replicants the Wallace Corp built basically are completely obedient. Like there's no risk of them going rogue like the Nexus models did.
Right.
So
first and foremost, Brad, what did you think of this movie?
So I was terrified for this film because
because you've seen all of the other Alien movies that Ridley Scott has done
and not only that, but like it seems like anytime nowadays that they resurrect these like long dormant franchises, it always ends up being crap. I mean, you look back at Total Recall, RoboCop remake, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I was skeptical going in. It also stars one of my least favorite actors in Ryan Gosling. So I was skeptical about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you'll laugh later when we talk about him. But then the trailers started to come out, and the trailers were done really well. So I was starting to get kind of excited for the film.
Yeah.
I was impressed. And they managed like the thing that everyone's been saying so far that I have heard talking about it is that they didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
So and that's a good thing. It's hard to talk about this movie without talking about the first Blade Runner. It's
impossible.
I'm actually amazed that this film even got made, and I don't mean that in like a this film is bad sense. I mean that this is a sequel that is inextricably linked to the first movie that was 35 years ago, which was this cult sci-fi classic.
Right.
So this film, by logic, should not exist from a Hollywood standpoint.
Right, because it's not like Blade Runner is like a Star Wars, right? It's not as if Blade Runner was this massive runaway hit where you're like, we got to do more of these. It really isn't. And it is such a very specific style of sci-fi that is asking existential questions, which one is not something you see in modern sci-fi at all. But that was like a very, I won't say prominent, but it was much more common in the 70s and 80s, right? So, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So, yeah, by all accounts, by Hollywood standards, this movie should not have existed.
No, but they really remain faithful to the film. And I'm actually shocked that the first one was kind of infamous for having some studio interference that led to some of the less desirable scenes in the first movie that led to the much superior director's cut that came later. It didn't seem like the studio had a whole lot of input on this at all. They kind of let the director and the team do their thing in this movie. For better or worse, there's some ups and downsides to that concept, but they captured the feel of the first film while it still feels like a very, very different sci-fi movie than the first movie was. Because to me, the first Blade Runner, it's kind of like a film version of a Rorschach test, because you can talk to 10 different people and they'll tell you 10 different interpretations of things that happen in the film.
Yeah.
That's not like that in this movie. The characters are much more narrowly defined than they were in the first film, and there is a much more traditional beat to the story in this movie, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. I think the original Blade Runner is a little bit more, I don't want to say all over the place because that makes it sound as a negative, but it's trying to do a lot And so it's kind of, okay, well, here's an idea, and like let's throw out this idea, so it's just doing more. So there's more targets to try to hit, right? Or to keep up with. You're right. This is far more linear, but in saying that, I don't want that to come across as a negative because it's not a negative.
And that's why I said that's why this is a tough film to evaluate objectively because, I mean, we're not evaluating objectively anyway, but it's a tough film to evaluate because it is so tied to the first movie.
It is
that it's impossible to divorce it from that just because of the story.
Right. And so what's your score? And then I'll give her a couple of points.
For me, it's a 4 out of 5. And the couple dings on it are the length, which
it's far
is a
too
long movie.
Yeah, it is
a
far
very
too
long movie. And the fact that and that's most of where the negatives come into play is around the length because there's a lot of scenes in the film where they're trying to develop and show you the nuance of the characters, but you get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like sure. They overdo it and they linger too long in a lot of parts so that they could have easily cut out and made a much tighter film that would have still captured the same beats.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be 9 director's cuts that come after this one.
That would be the director's cut would be 4 hours. Probably.
Oh my god, no! Because it's the runtime for this is 2 hours and 43 minutes, which is insane considering the runtime of the original is like
it's 2 hours. It's a straight 2 hours.
Yeah, it's 117 minutes. Yeah. Like, come on, guys! Like we get it. You really like Blade Runner. It's cool. I agree with you. 4 out of 5 is also my score. The length is probably my biggest ding on it, right? Like, all right, 245. Like, that's not Lord of the Rings. Like, all right, calm down. That being said, this has to be some of the best cinematography I've seen in a long time. I mean, it is gorgeous. And there are shots in this movie where they're showing off, man. They're like, you want to see something cool? Here it is. And they just like linger on these shots and you're just like, oh.
Well, and in a funny way, this kind of gives me even more appreciation for the way the first film was done too, because they were doing the same kind of stuff, but with way less capability in terms of like effects and stuff like that they could do.
Right. So, by the way, the cinematographer for this is Roger Deakins, and you might not know that name, but I guarantee you know his work. Sicario, Skyfall, True Grit, A Serious Man, Revolutionary Road, Doubt, No Country for Old Men. Like, this dude is at the forefront of some of the best shot movies in the last 15 years,
right.
10, 15 years, Jarhead, a lot of really great stuff. House of Sand and Fog, another one. So, it's beautifully done. Like, it really is beautifully done. I mean, some of the parts where, like closer to the end, are just that you'll see in the trailer, like that orange hue that is in those couple of scenes. You're just like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. Also, the lighting effects are really profound, like inside buildings, I thought was really cool.
Well, and again, that was something that the first film also, like, that's something you notice immediately.
You heavily lean on.
First, yeah. So.
Yeah. The acting was really great. I didn't think honestly, I didn't think anybody, I was like, they thought they did it. Like, I thought everybody was good. Even, your hate for Ryan Gosling.
You know what? And regular listeners of our programming will know why, like, they'll remember some of the critiques I have him. This is the role he was born to play.
Yeah, he's stiff. Like,
and he's supposed to be. There's a reason. So.
Right, exactly. And it was kind of funny because there were a couple of times I was like, yeah, that's about right, actually. Like, yeah, that's good. One of the real things I liked about this movie is the story is so, like you said, it's so intrinsically tied to the first one. This is not, a lot of times you can go, okay, well, here's a movie that existed back in the 70s or 80s. All right, they're making a follow-up to it. I could just go see it, right? This is not a remake. It's a direct sequel. But like, I could just kind of figure it out if I just go in, put a couple pieces together. No, don't do that. Like, if you have never seen Blade Runner,
watch it first.
Watch Blade Runner first. If you do not enjoy the first Blade Runner, I would argue this is probably not a movie for you.
You're probably right.
Not only
see the first Blade Runner, watch the 3 digital short films that came out before this movie as well. They're not absolutely necessary.
Yeah, because I only watched one of them.
Well, but they'll help you. They'll help you with form a more concrete knowledge of stuff in this world because there's a few events that happen that they reference a lot in the film that the short films will help you kind of dive into.
Because they didn't want to have a 3 hour and 30-minute runtime because even they realized how insane that was.
But I would agree with you. Yeah, if you haven't seen the first Blade Runner, you should definitely watch that before you watch this film, because if not, then there are characters and there are moments in the film that are totally wasted.
You will not understand. You're like, I don't know. Everyone's like, whoa. You'd be like, I don't get it. Why's that guy there? But yeah, there is so much of this movie that is tied to the first one. And again, that's not a bad thing. It is a direct sequel. But the story that they are telling is its own thing, right? It is not, it's not relying on, like, the movie relies on the first one for the world building, right? But this one
and the characters, like, there's a couple characters you need to know,
right?
Going in, so.
But this story in and of itself is such a great progression from part one, right? I love the story in this one, and I really like the story of the first one. This one, to me, almost a slightly better story, just because of where it went, where you thought it was going, and then where it kind of goes.
I will say there is definitely a extended rope-a-dope in this film for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I was ready to come in and basically, if what I thought was going to happen, I was going to be a little bit more negative in my critique, because I thought it.
We'll talk offline, but yes,
I would have thought it was a little lazy, but like I said, they definitely mix it up a little bit. In there. As far as the acting goes, I mostly agree with you. Help me with the actress's name that played Love, who is Wallace's like right hand person.
I don't Sylvia Hoeks.
Okay, so I could have. It's funny because obviously in the first part of the film they were going to they were obviously making her similar to the Rachel character from the first Blade Runner movie, and then in the second one I felt like she was intentionally trying to channel like the Roy Batty character a little bit from from the end of the first one.
Yeah.
Didn't really need that in there. Robin Wright was also fine in this movie, but her scenes were not necessary to be in this film at all.
She didn't need to be here at all.
Yeah.
But as a Robin Wright apologist and lover of all things Robin Wright, I was happy to see her in it. But yeah, she didn't need to be in it.
I liked Leto a lot. Like I said, Jared Leto had a typical Jared Leto role where he gets to be weird and quirky and memorable, even though he's only in a few scenes. So.
Yeah, and just chewing up scenery, man. Like, and again, not as a negative, but he is this wild-minded, existential, like, oh, but what about heaven? Type of character, and it works. It totally works for him. I liked there's an effect they do with him, which I thought was cool. Right?
Yeah.
The other people in the movie, I thought Dave Bautista was good. Like, he wasn't in it that long, but I thought he was good.
He's coming on as one of these stealth character guys in these action movies.
I saw an article with Dave Bautista, just as a quick aside. He said it's really hard for him to break into acting because he's built like a, quote, fucking gorilla. And he was like, people have a hard time taking him seriously. But he was good. I thought he was good. And he's done a really good job in doing these sort of, outside of Guardians of the Galaxy, which he's like overstated, but he works in those roles.
Right.
But he's done a good job of doing these kind of understated roles, and this one was one of them. I thought he did a good job. I can't remember the woman's name. I want to say, is it Mackenzie Davis? Yeah, Mackenzie Davis, who some people know from *Halt and Catch Fire*, which is a great series. She was great in it as well. And Anna de Armas was great as Joy. She was like, she's sort of this holographic companion to Ryan Gosling's character, and she was great. Like, she was really great. The world in which they kind of came back to and upgraded looked beautiful. Like, it looked really good. It still had that same gritty.
I was surprised they didn't have as many scenes in the city that much.
No, they kind of and
I wonder if they did that on purpose because they didn't, if they couldn't replicate it accurately, if they didn't want to touch it, basically.
Yeah, I could see that, because there's so much of the original Blade Runner that just takes place in, not just in the city, but like really
in shops and stuff like
right,
that.
Like really
businesses and things.
Yeah,
like
really down and gritty into the middle of the city. Where this one, there was a couple moments of him like walking through the city, and it's like, all right, we got all this other shit that's going on.
Or he's in like a small courtyard, or he goes to see this one guy, but it's very scattered about, and they actually go outside of the city quite a bit more.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Which is interesting to see, because in the first film they didn't really address anything outside of LA too much.
No. Well, they do in this one.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say this, and this is something that I've started to notice more as I do more film reviews, is the costuming in this movie is just so fucking cool.
Can I tell you, I really want his
that coat, dude. That coat is awesome. That coat is amazing.
If you don't think I'm going home right as soon as we're done this and kind of Googling it and see if I can find it.
I was like, it's getting cold outside.
It is.
Dude, that coat was fucking, yeah, dude, that coat was badass. Like, the costuming in this movie is cool. And not just his stuff. Like, everybody's clothing fit the grittiness, but the futuristic style of the film and everything else. It was just really great. I can't say enough about the music. I just thought
the music's
tremendous.
the most important thing that they had to that they really had to nail for the style, because Blade Runner is one of those films that has that very synthy, 80s sci-fi soundtracks, and they completely followed that chord. I think Hans Zimmer did the music.
It's Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch.
Okay.
And yeah, it's got, and it has that feel. It recaptures the original feel, and it's got like a level of creepiness to it, which was great. But even though Hans Zimmer worked on this, it doesn't have the classic Hans Zimmer score, right? So you're not like, that's Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, it's not that. It doesn't have the blah.
Right. Well,
see.
It does a couple of times, but it's not that same type
but
of thing.
it's done like you said, the and this is another thing, I think we talked about this when we did the Planet of the Apes one, where the soundtrack helps convey the emotion of the scene when the characters don't have to speak, basically.
Right.
And it's really helpful. And like you said, there's some parts that intentionally sound dreadful to keep you on edge because you don't know and that kind of stuff. So yeah, very good job with the score for sure. I agree.
Yeah. Look, all in all, man, if you really liked the original Blade Runner, this is not just a decent follow-up. This is a damn great effort.
Right. And this is, and again, we talked about it earlier, and so often you get these sequels where they try to recapture the magic that was in the first film,
right? And
it never fizzled out. This is the one time where they finally nailed it. And if you are a fan of the first film, like Jay said, I agree, it's something you definitely should watch. And if you haven't seen the first Blade Runner, you should really do that too. It's one of those movies that that everyone should have to watch, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the first one deals with such a huge question of what is humanity, what is humanity, what is God, what is what is the value of life, that sort of thing. Where this one, not to give anything away, is much more about really what does it mean to be human, and like sort of the evolution of those questions, so to speak, from the first one. It takes those existential questions and kind of moves it in a logical progression that you would have over 30 years of having these fucking robots walking around.
Right.
But it one of the things it doesn't do, which I'm glad it doesn't do, but this is like one of those like pet peeve things. If you're having so many problems with robots looking like people, stop making them look exactly like people. It's not that hard. They're just like, no, but we want to make them look like people. Like, guys, this is really confusing.
And for those of you that watched the first film that are curious, you'll be happy to know that robot racism is still rampant.
Absolutely.
In this first film, and in the second film for sure.
Right. And there are a couple moments where you can go, clearly this is an allegory for this other
right,
thing,
of course.
Right. And that is one of the things I love about this series and love about like the thinking man sci-fi, right? Is how do we take these concepts, throw them into an age where we could do fantastical things that we can't quite do yet, and then use that as a way to ask questions that we should be asking now.
Yeah.
Right. But it does that, and it does it in a really creative and beautifully shot way. It really does. So Blade Runner 2049, 4 out of 5, damn good follow-up. Didn't think it could be done.
No. But
really
they did it.
But they did it. Very great, an excellent effort. So go check out Blade Runner 2049, and if you haven't, and you should, go check out the original Blade Runner. All right, guys, that is it for us for Coming Distractions. Again, brought to you by the Nerdpocalypse podcast. You can find us at comingdistractionspod.com and listen to the audio versions of these, or you can go to youtube.com/thenerdpocalypse and find the video versions as well. So we'll see you next time.